All right, so if we look at this image here, we have see you tonight, ... hi, ... hello, ... ghosting. And then we have, let me move, February, what is it? February 15th, the date night. Oh, the day after Valentine's Day. Okay. You've been ghosted. You've been ghosted on Valentine's Day. Okay. That's, there we go. Okay. So we're going to talk about more deeper connections and ghosting. This can be connections that are romantic in nature. It can be soulmate type connections, or this is also, I wouldn't say it's a new term for me. I was familiar with this term. I've made a video about soulmates and twin flames a long time ago, but I guess I never really knew what the difference was until I actually experienced both of those things. Very recently. I've experienced soulmates for like over a decade. But the other one was like, that's like brand new. So that is like absolutely wild. to say the least. To say the least. So we're going to talk about why ghosting can be in these types of relationships that are very, very strong. So let's just talk about what soulmates are, what these twin flames are, if you've ever encountered them. I've encountered these sorts of things many, many times in my life personally. Okay? A lot of times. And, oh man. For me, what is a soulmate in my eyes? How do I define a soulmate type person? Now, these can be romantic in nature. They don't have to be romantic. But I would say with a lot of the people that I have met, that I have considered like soulmate type people, maybe about half of them maybe are some sort of romantic nature to some degree. So what is it really? What is a soulmate, and how do you really know? Well, for me, it's mostly about, I just suddenly just will recognize the person to some degree. Whether it be I see them and I'm like, they look very familiar, or something goes through my mind like, them, we are going to be very, very close. Or it could be that I am talking with them and we connect on a lot of deep levels, more so than I connect with many other people. So I was kind of reflecting back many, many years ago with some people that I communicated with, some people I talked with, and I even looked long time ago, like in my journal when I was talking with some of these people. I had talked with some people for like 6 or 7 hours straight. And I'm just like, I would never do that now. I would never do that now. Like usually with some closer friends that I communicate with, it's maybe 1.5 to 2 hours max. But I mean, I just recently had like a 3-hour conversation with someone else new. So it's like, how long am I willing to talk to some of these people? So it's very interesting. So usually that's the type of thing that I begin to notice if it's a deeper connection than most people. Usually with these people, there's something different about them that I connect with on a deeper level than is just very surface level. There's usually, if you're familiar with the term, synchronicities associated with some of these people. Synchronicities being meaningful coincidences. So these are things that they didn't just happen by chance. Things happened for a reason. And these coincidences happen for a particular reason. And here's ultimately what the lesson that soulmates are here to really teach you. And this is where some of the ghosting comes into play here. Because ghosting, if you're very, very close with someone and you have a very, very close connection that is more than just a physical connection, like you're attracted to them, or any sort of like sexual connection, or even like an emotional connection. We're talking about like a much deeper soul connection, like you feel something there. This is where some of the ghosting can come into play, and why this ends up happening in these types of relationships and connections. Primarily, the way that I view it with soulmate type individuals is that they come into your life for a reason. You teach them something, they teach you something. Once that lesson is learned, you no longer have a use in the relationship, and then you part ways. Basically, the way that I've described it before, if you imagine a path, this person's here, you're here, you eventually get to a point where you meet, you connect, you begin talking, you begin to realize, wow, we're like so different, but we're also very similar in some ways, and you're connecting with a similar purpose, similar mission. Something major happens, and both of you awaken. You have major realizations about your life. You begin to go through a lot of changes. And then, once that healing and growth is done, that path continues, and you begin to veer off in very different ways. That is what a soulmate connection is, and why ghosting comes into play here. Because even though the paths are very different and they can cross for a few weeks, a few months, or even many, many years. You may have some soulmates that last your entire lifetime. It's certainly possible. But they are here with you, let's just say, for several years. And then you eventually get to a point where you begin to drift apart. This creates friction. This creates problems. And then often, the relationship will end in some sort of way. It could be through ghosting, depending on how long the relationship is. If the relationship is many, many years, it's less likely that it's going to be through ghosting, although it could be the gradual type of ghosting, where you two begin talking a lot less frequently. You're not talking about more in-depth things as much. You are no longer really resonating. It's more conflict, and then it eventually ends. So this is usually, when I think about soulmates, that is usually what I think about. Some of them can come into your life like boom, and then they will leave your life like boom, very, very quickly. Or it could be many, many, many years. But the ultimate thing to take away from it is that they are here to teach you something valuable. They're here to shape your life and change your life just as you are doing with them. And that's something to remember, because if you are learning and growing from the connection with the other person, they are also learning and growing at the same time. But they are learning and growing to be their authentic self, and just like you're growing and learning to be your authentic self. But you eventually separate. That has been my experience at least with pretty much all these types of soulmate type connections. Of course, as I said, some of them can last. Some of them can be negative in nature. Some of them can be platonic. Some of them can be romantic. Some of them can last for many, many years. But at least from my experience, they all end. They all pretty much end to some degree, or they tone down tremendously. Maybe initially they were way up here, and then they eventually tone down. Maybe you are still friends, you still talk occasionally, but it's not the same as it was initially. So that is soulmates. But what about twin flame type connections? Now this is, as I said, this is a term that I was familiar with, but I guess really knew what the difference was. So this is basically someone that is basically kind of following your life path the entire way, but in very different ways. They are always connected to you, but you may have never actually met them. And when you do, all those things that we just talked about, all the major growth, all the synchronicities are going to be like 10 times higher. And this is something that I have experienced recently, just this year. All these crazy things that are just, it's like take all the other connections that I had combined and then throw them, all of them combined still doesn't equal this type of experience here. So this is a whole different level of type of connection here. But there can still be a lot of ghosting within this particular connection as well. And it's primarily because if both of you are very, very connected individuals, very soul connected and energetically connected, but you express it very differently. That tends to be the key takeaway. Your knowledge on certain subjects is extremely different, if not the polar opposite, and your experiences could also be the polar opposite. And as a result, when you're talking with someone like this, they basically are a reflection of your self, in that they will bring out a lot of the things that you need to work on within yourself. Things that had been dormant for a very, very long time that you had suppressed, things that have been very, very hard for you to cope with and deal with. They bring that out in ways that no one else possibly could, that make you realize, I have to work on this sort of thing. And usually what ends up happening is that one person may be too scared of some sort of change, or they may not be able to really know how to deal with all of these feelings that are coming up that require them to change, or that they have to face. They have to face the dark side of themselves, and they may not be able to. So it's easier. What is it easier to do? It's easier to ghost. It's easier to just run away from the situation and pretend like, oh, this is too much to handle. But the fact is, because of how this connection is and how it works, that person always ends up coming back to some degree, because there's no separating those types of people. So as a result, there's a lot of learning and growth with how the relationship is, even if it's not romantic in nature, because of the dynamic of how it works and perhaps some of the ghosting that could be involved in it. There's a lot of learning and growth there. So it's very, very interesting when we really think about it. So think about some situations in your life that maybe you have met people that have made a major change within your own life, that perhaps you will go separate ways to some degree. That tends to be someone who is like a very deep soulmate type connection. But, there's always something to learn. No matter what the connection is, there's something major to be learned, and you have to be the one to learn from that connection. If you're not learning something from the connection, then you're missing out on what life is teaching you. Life is basically saying to you, learn something. It's shouting at you, indirectly, mind you, in very different ways. But it's interesting. It really is. So let me know what your thoughts are on this.